each resident that has stayed there for over a year gets a check every year from the Alyeska Pipeline Fund. This year, I think they said it was just over $3,000 per person. Yeah.
That is super cool.
Yeah, I learned a lot, man.
This is K-12 Tech Talk. K-12 Tech Talk. The podcast by K-12 Techs for K-12 Techs. Real conversations, real arguments, and real banter on trending K-12 technology topics and issues.
Live from the somethingcool.com studios, this is the K-12 Tech Talk podcast. I am Josh, fresh off of vacation. We'll talk about that.
Looking tan, man.
I am looking tan. I don't know how you get a tan in Alaska, but somehow I managed to. I am Josh. With me, as always, you've already heard him because he doesn't wait for his intro. Chris.
Jerk. I see you changed since vacation.
And Mark, who pleasantly waits until he's introduced to speak.
Good evening.
How you guys been? It's been a few weeks.
It's been a few. We've had 4th of July. We've been here. You've been away.
I have been away.
We've been missing you.
But yeah, I went to Alaska for 2 weeks and froze my butt off, sweated my butt off, apparently got a tan, walked on a glacier, saw whales, moose, bears, got to meet the captain of the ship. We took a helicopter ride, my first ever helicopter ride.
A few moments later.
I bought a nice yellow raincoat.
Gotcha.
My wife and my son have been making fun of me for the last 2 weeks, calling me the road cone when they look for sun. Just look for it. He looks like a big road cone, big yellow raincoat.
Much later.
There's lots of ways to die in Alaska. I know our listeners in Alaska will appreciate that. Cow's parsnip. Look that plant up. If you touch that plant and you then expose your skin to sunlight, you will get 3rd-degree chemical burns, is what we were told there. Cow's parsnip.
The next day.
I will say, without getting into too much detail and boring everyone, but I could do a podcast on traveling to Alaska now because I'm an expert. If Alaska is on your bucket list, get it off your bucket list. Go there, do it. Spend a week, take the cruise. If you have the ability and the time, spend a couple days in the interior and go see Denali National Park and try to see Denali Mountain. Absolutely amazing trip. I thought I knew what I was in store for. I had no clue.
Mark, who is this guy?
I don't know. I'm just trying to think, how much do we have to edit out?
Hurtful, Mark. Hurtful.
Welcome to Josh in Alaska.
We need special intro music for that. The Alaska.
We're well past the intro.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm done. I like Alaska. I like Alaska, Josh.
You two take over. See ya.
No, it's fine. Do they have? Did you see any HPE Aruba access points or anything like that in Alaska? Do you see any technology? Do they have technology up there?
They do have technology up there. What was it I texted you guys about and asked if I should offer to help? Oh, the DHCP server at our one of our resorts was not working and handing out IPs for the guest Wi-Fi. So I thought I was going to have to offer to help with that. But I did not see any HP Aruba equipment.
Wi-Fi works in the cold?
Yeah, 40 below zero. Mm-hmm.
I like it. HP Aruba, by the way, a proud sponsor of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast. And they're going to be at Midwest Tech Talk next week as well.
What's Midwest Tech Talk?
The greatest conference in the Midwest, possibly nationally. Did you know that Aruba bought out, those Axis security camera stuff? HPE did? Did you know that?
Really? I did not know that.
True story.
Interesting.
So I'm told. I didn't actually fact check it.
We'll just take our salesman's word at that. How can they get a hold? Who can they get a hold of at HPE?
They can email Jeff. I'll put this in the podcast description. Jeff at Aruba. Yeah, HPE Aruba fortifies network security with acquisition of security service edge provider Axis Security. That's kind of recent news.
Yeah, sounds like it. Probably happened in the 2 weeks that I was gone. Did you guys know I was in Alaska for 2 weeks?
It's unbelievable.
Mark, you had some breaking news yesterday. You weren't in Alaska. What was the breaking news?
That was the news.
No,
Josh kept texting us, and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm in Alaska. Where you guys at?" Well, I'm in Missouri, Josh, and Mark is still in Massachusetts.
Mark, what was the big news? Shut up, Chris. What was the big news that we were talking about yesterday?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a heads up, but the FCC just announced a new proposal. The details at this time are very, very slim, but the FCC is starting to walk their way into cybersecurity money as part of E-rate. And so the chairwoman Rosenworcel just announced a $200 million pilot to provide assistance for cybersecurity for K-12. Now, the details really of how this is going to be disseminated is there's just no details out right now. So it could be direct to schools. From reading the press conference or the press announcement, it seems like it's going to be actually kind of highlighting or complementing some of the existing services. So maybe someone like MS Isaac or CISA would start to benefit from these funds as well, and you start to receive services from them. Or there could be funds going to schools. I think because it's a pilot, we might see a little bit of both. So we might see kind of boosting of some existing services that you can get for free from MS Isaac, maybe speeding up the timeline it takes to get a pen test. Or there might be some other opportunities for school districts to get funds.
You know what I would love to see in that would be some eligibility expansion around firewall subscriptions. Because I know that can, depending on where that falls, it can be denied whenever you buy a new firewall, or if you go back to ask for the yearly renewals.
Right.
I would love to see that that become an eligible service in the near future.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how this complements E-rate. And so, if you are making your E-rate purchases and you want to buy a complementary service that is more on the cybersecurity side, like you just said, a firewall subscription, is that a separate line item? Is that a separate fund? Is this, cybersecurity money going to be kind of added to your existing E-rate pool? Or would you have to apply to these things separately? I think all of those things, that's all just kind of rattling around in my mind of how would that play out in a scenario like you just described.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's hard because if it goes into E-rate land, that can be a wonderful thing. Like I could buy a firewall and get all the services that I need with it. But that also means that other schools are probably going to apply for E-rate funding that didn't normally apply, which means there's less pie to go around. It could play out kind of in an interesting way with that.
Well, it's the same amount of pie, just you get less of a piece of the pie.
Yeah, I want my whole. I want 3 pieces.
One thing that I think, another expansion of eligible services, DDoS protection for your internet connection. I think that's an easy item to add without much discussion, because I know the carrier that I have wants to charge an arm and a leg for it, and I can't afford that. To me, that's along with firewall subscriptions. That'd be another super easy one to add to an eligibility of service list.
I think what's hard is I can't think of a single cybersecurity related purchase that does not require an additional year, like multiple years of funding with licensing and subscription costs. And so if this is a pilot, it'll be interesting to see what people decide to do, not knowing if you're going to have any funding the next year.
So I read somewhere today, I don't remember if what article it was, but I heard that it was, or read that it was a 3-year pilot program along with that $200 million. So
okay,
I think they understand that exactly that point, Mark. Very little of anything you purchase in that cyberspace is a buy it once and you're done thing.
Right.
Subscription services are how it's all done now anyway.
Okay. Well, that's the FCC news. Just came out this week. It'll be really interesting to see where the details start to sort themselves out.
Super cool. And be exciting to see how they allocate that.
Is it really super cool?
It is. Like Alaska. It's really cold there. 40 below in the winter.
It is super cool in Alaska.
I really looked for our Alaskan listeners too. I wore my F12 is not hacking shirt. So speaking of cybersecurity services, Chris, why don't you tell us about Fortinet real quick and what all they
Fortinet,
provide?
a proud sponsor of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast. They got firewalls, but one of my colleagues is moving to, I guess because they do switches as well, right? And wireless access points.
Yes.
So one of my colleagues, one of my best buddies, is moving. They're all in on Fortinet.
Yeah.
They're going to the firewall. They're going to the switches. They're going to the wireless access points and all those things talking together. They're building a FortiWall against the world is what they're doing.
A Fortinet network.
Oh, that's good too.
Mhm.
So good stuff. More than just a firewall. If you already got the firewall, know that they do more services, more products, the whole bit. We'll put a link to Chris, our friend Chris at Fortinet, in the podcast description.
We're probably going to get in trouble for this, but you know what Fortinet needs to do now for schools that adopt their product line top to bottom, you know, for the switches, the firewall, access points, they need to create a logo that the school can put on their website as for like a marketing, you know, how like the, somebody has the TLE, trusted learning environment. I think that's COSN. Fortinet needs to come up with an image that for a Forta school, like they have adopted, they're all in on Fortinet. They're a Forta school.
Can we, I'm going to chase your rabbit with you, okay? So you're saying the school should be loud and proud of what cybersecurity products they are using.
Well,
and they're going to bark at the world and say, come at me, bro, because I'm Fortinet.
Good point. Good point.
Or do you hide it? This was just a topic of discussion. And you know, because we all do board reports too, right? That are public information.
Yeah.
Where we're saying like what products we're approving and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Should we be against that? Should we care? Should we be like, yeah, do come at me? Like, this is what we do. And we do have cybersecurity. Not to say like invite, but to not be ashamed of it or to hide it or whatever. What do you guys think on that?
I think to say that, you know, in a board report, you can say you have, I think, at least your board members, and it's all local, right? Like you need to gauge your environment. But to tell your board that you have a Fortinet firewall or FortiGate and that you're using FortiGate or Fortinet switches, I think is okay. Because you're going to have other products behind that or in front of that as another layer of defense. Like you're going to have a next-gen antivirus. You're going to have other precautions on your network, access control lists, etc. But now, when you get into the weeds of some of those deeper precautions, those I definitely would hold closer to the vest. I think Mark's not going to agree with
Mark,
this here.
Would you tell us all of your cybersecurity products, please?
You know, I think scammers are doing a lot of research to figure out, you know, what are your vulnerabilities, what are your holes. I think you should make it a lot easier for them and just put it right on your website. Like, this is what we use.
A giant FortiWall.
Come on. Like you said, come at me, bro. Like, just put it right there. Just stop making it so hard for them to have to do all this research and read through board documents and stuff. Just put it right up front.
Mark, I love it.
I have mixed feelings. I have mixed feelings about it.
Okay.
Because I also think if I am bragging, and again, not like going out of my way, maybe I'm not doing the icon on my website. Okay. But that's not a crazy idea. I like all ideas. But if I'm just not going to go out of my way to hide it, if someone's fumbling upon, if the bad guy is learning about me, and if I guess I'm having confidence in what I have, but also acknowledging that there's going to be holes, right?
Sure.
But if they're seeing that I have weapons against them or defense things in place, I'm hoping that there's been sentences that say that I have stuff will be a deterrent for them to come at me, that they're going to pick on someone else that maybe they have less information about.
Well, it gets back to that quote that we had on the last episode, right? That ended up on another super popular technology podcast a couple weeks ago. There is no defending, more or less. There's only a response,
right?
You know, I see the point. I see Mark's point of holding that information close to the chest because it is valuable information. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of it is holding back any sort of information that could pose a risk to your company. The other part, though, is that I think scammers are, this is some of these big hits are bragging rights for different scammers for different organizations. And if you're holding yourself up as being impenetrable or here's what I have in place to stop you, that could be enticing. It could actually bring people in. So I think part of it is you don't want to give any information that could give the attacker an advantage. And the other part is I want to be careful about giving them something to brag about, that I hit XYZ or I hit so-and-so. So
well,
that's all.
And two, if you go on record saying you have a Palo Alto, let's just say, who's not an advertiser, and there's some 0-day that comes out for Palo.
Right.
And okay, this guy knows, okay, it's documented this district or these companies have gone on record and saying that they have Palos. We know we can go after those. Although it doesn't take a rocket scientist with a scanning utility to find all of the public facing Palos. It's not that difficult to do.
Well, here's why, and I'll take another approach too. Here's why I think it's a bad idea for a vendor to have their name put on a school district website, is because if a school is hit, if a district is hit or a company is hit,
sure, and
the media starts going to that website and was like, wow, what happened? How did this happen? And the first thing they see is a security company's logo. That doesn't look good on the security company. So unless, I guess, what you were originally saying was if you're having the entire suite, if you're protecting the entire organization, that's one thing. But there's always a door in, and It's always the human. But I'd want to be careful. Yeah, I just want to be careful about putting too much information out there.
That's why I like this show. This is why I like talking with you guys, because you always bring me down to earth, Mark.
What a bad idea.
I got to bring you back from Alaska. Your mind has been.
I'm still on this Alaskan high. Yeah. So that's cool, Chris. I like that.
Super cool
that they're going full stack Fortinet. How can you? I know we already talked about Fortinet. What's Chris's email, or what's the email they can
FortinetPodcast@Fortinet.com.
So you can email Chris if you want to look at going full stack Aruba or just a piece of Aruba, but don't ask for a Fortischool logo because they're probably not going to do it. Because apparently it's a bad idea. Look, guys, I'm running on like 6 hours of sleep, so that's just take it with a grain of salt.
Remember when Josh was talking about putting a logo of your cybersecurity products on the homepage of your website?
I mean,
Mark, you remember when he said that?
Yeah, he didn't talk about that ahead of time. That was just Josh winging it.
Yeah, that's what 6 hours of sleep does.
You know what else wasn't on the script ahead of time? Josh talking about Alaska for 10 minutes.
Oh, it was not 10 minutes. And you're just going to get more now. You keep pushing. So while I was gone to Alaska, we had several listener emails. They were wondering if we were alive, number one. Two, they had some questions for us. Chris, do you have those listener emails up?
I do. We got listener Dan. Says, happy summer. Apparently CISA offers free .gov domains. It sounds like schools are included with this. You can go to get.gov. There's some interesting details on it. It can basically help you to get to something that makes more sense for your organization, like a .org that makes sense. It'd be a lot of work, he says, but it would give schools something nicer, neater, as far as their domain goes. And he kind of wanted to know what our opinion would be of that to switch to something like that. What do you guys think?
Mark, you can go first.
It's a great idea.
I don't think that I would jump on .gov. I'm waiting for .edu to be open to K-12, which apparently that request has been made to the FCC. Because I emailed EDUCAUSE, it's been a couple months ago, because they're the ones that more or less maintain the registrations for .edu, and said, hey, are you guys thinking about opening this up for K-12? And they said that the restrictions are actually set by the FCC. So that request has been made. They're talking about it. there was no inclination as far as when that decision would be made. But that's the top level domain that I want is .edu, and I think that makes more sense than .gov. But
Yeah.
if you don't already have a state K-12 .us domain, it would make sense to go to a .gov domain.
Yeah.
I get the rationale.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know if a teacher would want a .gov email address.
Why?
Seems like a weird thing to be getting
As
an
a
email
former
from a teacher.
Mark, tell us why a teacher wouldn't like.
Oh,
a
Mark was a teacher? Ugh.
No, I don't know. When I think of like .gov, I think of like a government official, a politician, or
Yeah,
a
awesome.
city employee, municipal employee. Not a teacher. I don't know. It doesn't seem so friendly and kid friendly. And would your students get a .gov account? What would you do with the kids?
That's a good point. You would want a separate domain for your kids, I would think.
Yeah, well then that's just weird. You'd separate your staff, and I don't know about that.
You don't separate your staff? Well,
No, you'd have to separate. You
Yeah,
have
I know.
to separate your staff. So
There are several schools that I know that have different domains for student versus staff.
Right?
Chris, do you?
No.
I know
We
there's
just
several
changed the naming scheme.
several in our area have different domains for staff and students. So there you go, Dan. We're going to wait. What's the next email?
We have open source software with critical infrastructure. So this is from listener Mitch. Says earlier this year we transitioned from a VMware cluster to Proxmox cluster. I'm not familiar with that. We had this plan well before the VMware acquisition was announced. That helped us move off of VMware. We went to Proxmox, if I'm saying that right, Proxmox. It saved us time and money and also allows us to keep our infrastructure up to date. The support's not the same. It runs on Debian, which means the long story short is we could have some different issues because it's open source software. So what is the opinion, guys, of doing that? Open source, cool, good, but it's on your critical stuff. Would you do it? Do you do it? Are you willing to talk about it, Mark? What would you say?
I think you got to be really careful with what you use open source for. I don't know if I would use it on critical infrastructure. I think I would really want to have a vendor supported platform. But honestly, not because I'm against open source or because I think it's unsafe, but I think it takes a little bit more time and you're kind of a little bit more on your own. And our time is critical. There's nobody out there in K-12 that says they've got plenty of staff and plenty of time. So I'd rather have more of a vendor supported platform.
We're going to get hate email from the Linux nerds.
I know. I'm not against it. I'm just saying I think you got to be careful with what you use it for and how much time it requires to take. Because if all of your time is eaten up by supporting an open source product, then you're not really saving money or time. But I think there's a time and a place.
I agree with you. And I think my rationale is along the lines of manpower, because I don't have a staff of 50 people and someone that's specialized in Linux. Because to me, that's what it takes to run a Linux backend, especially mission critical, is you need an expert on your team. And I'm not, my guys aren't. So to me, that would be very difficult to run a mission critical. Now we have run monitoring solutions on Linux. For one reason or another, we end up migrating away from them after a while anyway. But yeah, I wouldn't run a sys on Linux backend right now. Chris?
It reminds me for some reason, and I guess it's reminding me of the feeling when virtualization was new at previous school district. I couldn't afford. I could go with the free ESXi. And I was not comfortable with it, but I wanted to do virtualization stuff, but it was super scary, but I couldn't afford the good stuff. And I remember just treading into the waters of, I guess we're going to do this thing. And I just had that, I was always uneasy about, it was like the early days of virtualization and I'm doing this thing that's free. And I know we're talking about open source, now I'm kind of chasing down free here, but that idea of like support, you're picking products for critical things that you can't get good support on. it was a feeling that I went through that I had, but you can put a value to that. I think that's what's hard. Like Mark was talking about the time that you're spending and even where your headspace is at, that you're worried about your servers or worried about these different things now. I think that's what you have to weigh. If you got resources like people, man hours to do it, okay, let's go. Let's chase the free stuff, the open source stuff. But
yeah, but if you're going to be gone to Alaska for 2 weeks, you need to have another expert on your staff besides you.
And I remember too, this is, I had it was back in the days we had Squirrel Mail. Did either of you guys have Squirrel Mail before back in the day?
No.
And then we moved to.
I wish people could see the look on Mark's face.
He was a teacher. You were a teacher during Squirrel Mail days. Moved to Zimbra, and this was before Gmail. And Zimbra was like it ran on Red Hat, and it was the first email that you could like drag and drop. You could drag and drop emails. It was like a game changer. But anyways, that was on Linux. And I was a one-man tech department, and I knew very little about Linux. So I had this email server, I'm just hoping it's okay. And again, that feeling, and that this email reminds me of those feelings. Where again, if you can push through that and you feel confident in what you're doing the whole bit, maybe you do it. But if you're going to lean on support, as great as tech communities are. Sometimes when it's open source, you're leaning on a whole lot of other people as opposed to a company to just, be able to cuss at or whatever. So it's a good debate, though.
You don't cuss.
I don't cuss.
So I was in similar shoes, Chris, at a prior job many moons ago. We had first class email system, which was big in K-12. And it ran on a Linux backend. And we ran into a couple problems expanding disks because, mail storage does nothing but expand. So yeah, we were in a very similar boat.
I freaked out every time we had to reboot it.
Sure. I could see that. Because you're not a Linux nerd. And Linux,
No, I was like, how do you reboot? And then you'd remember that you just type reboot. But
Linux nerds, please don't email us with hate mail because we know. We get
Actually, it wouldn't be as easy to type reboot. You had to go look. You had to go talk to 10 people on a message board, and they'd all tell you their different opinions on how to reboot a Linux server properly.
Now we're going to get an opinion. Chris, why don't you tell us about a company that does have great support and would help you through anything, Extreme Networks?
Extreme Networks, a proud sponsor of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast. Our good old buddy pal Dominic Mayer, and he's going to be at Midwest Tech Talk next week. You can email dmayer@extremenetworks.com. I got logged into our IQ stuff. Our switches are getting set up in there. Poking, since I'm network administrator now, I've been poking around on that. My Linux days, those days are over.
You're a network admin now.
I'm a network admin now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And our third and final listener email tonight.
It's a quick one. This is by the way, Mitch was from Australia.
Oh, cool.
You guys got an Australian accent you want to try out really quick?
No, but I met several people from Australia while I was in Alaska.
The final email, and it's a quick ask. Do you guys know anything about Bloxy? This is from listener Richard. And what would be a hot take on it?
I think it's a fine filter. It serves the purpose for filtering Chromebooks and all that fun stuff. They're relatively young in the space, but they have a pretty mature product. I think over the last 3 years or so, it's matured quite a bit. We actually demoed it a couple times. I know probably 5 or 6 districts in my circle of people that I communicate with on a regular basis that are running it and seem to love it. There's a very large district in my area that runs it. Actually, 2 pretty large districts in my area that run it. And they have great things to say about it. I think it's worth talking to them to get a demo instance or at least a conversation to see how they do things differently than other competitors.
I agree.
They have the whole suite too. Like they've got the filtering, they've got the screen monitoring. Like they can do it all. yeah, it's a good product, or I should say, it's one of those products that would be a finalist due to price and feature set. Yes. All right. What else we got?
That's it. We're caught up.
All right. So if you have a Sonic Wall product, I know we've talked about Fortinet and their vulnerabilities that they've announced, and you need to patch now. Well, Sonic Wall has had one, came out, I believe it was yesterday. Yes, yesterday. It's Bleeping Computer has an article on it if you want to get the details about it. But more or less, there was a total of 15 flaws announced by Sonic Wall. You need to update your stuff if you have a Sonic Wall device on your network. Things include web service bypass, unauth SQL injection issues, password hash reads. So yeah, if you have a Sonic Wall device on your network, go over to Bleeping Computer and read the notice that was posted out there yesterday.
Josh, are you noticing Mark is looking at his computer and the screen keeps changing, right? Like you can see.
He's
off
not
of his
paying
face.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think he either started doing a Sonic Wall update. I don't really know what he's doing, or like you said, he's not paying attention to us.
I think he's filing a request for that E-rate pilot myself.
He's trying to get the edge on us.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get the money here. I got it.
Yep.
I got it.
Yep, I think that's what's happening. We already talked about the conference. Do you want to talk about K12 Tech Pro real quick?
I would love to talk about K12 Tech Pro, and I guess the kind of I'm going to crack the news open, right? Because I'm excited about it, but I'm not going to give the full details. I think it's cooler to read. If you head over to Reddit, and if you get into K12 sysadmin, there's a pretty cool post today from Geek Ender, one of the mods, the major mod of that subreddit, involving the podcast, involving K12 Tech Pro. And the long story short, I guess, just to talk about it briefly, is we're going to try to partner up and do some cool things, and nothing's changing. They've needed some help with vetting, with moderating, that kind of thing. We offered to help, and we several of you guys that listen to this and that are on K12 Tech Pro gave your opinions about that you thought we could do a decent job, I guess, with it. So that's starting to happen. So it's the middle of July right now. I think by the beginning of August, we should have a pretty cool vetting thing in place with that subreddit. But it can kind of be a partnership with K12 Tech Pro with the community website. We know from the podcast, from that website, from the conference, it's all about community and talking through problems and solutions. And I'm super excited about it. That's fresh news today.
Hot
Very
off
cool.
the wire. Big announcement.
Big.
And next week is Midwest Tech Talk. I'm sure there'll be discussion about it all there as well.
Mark's coming to the Lake of the Ozarks.
He's going to be astonished. Mark, I'm going to have to send you. I saw an article before we got on tonight about a lady that tried to cross the lake in a John boat, and it went horribly bad for them. I'll send you the article.
I just read an article that the chief, like the police chief of like the lake, is concerned about visitors. Like Mark.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
That's funny.
Mark's in for a real treat, I think.
I think so too.
So in part of my preparation for going this week, I was reading an article off of BuzzFeed, and this is why my screen was flickering. I was pulling this thing up for you guys. Somebody used AI to interview a bunch of people from Europe and ask them what they think people look like from each state in the United States.
Oh, that's good.
So I think we should post this in the show notes. But I wanted to show you again. This will be one of my first times spending like some good amount of time in Missouri. So I was very eager to see what do people from Missouri look like.
Is this a picture of me?
This is
That's funny.
This is apparently what people from Europe describe somebody from Missouri looking like, and then AI generating an image.
I'm offended.
And so
Yeah.
But that's
kind of
what the meals at Midwest Tech Talk look like.
That's exactly what the meals at Midwest Tech Talk
I
look like.
I don't know what that is. Just if you're listening, it's a guy staring at a big pile of what I think was meant to be barbecue.
It's just meat,
but it just looks like a big
in
old
a
pile
lumber
of meat.
yard, which is the most bizarre part of this.
Yeah. So now, all right. So I'll jump over to being from Massachusetts. This is what people think Massachusetts looks like.
Freaking Patriots.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you guys are rude over there.
There's a sloppy guy with a Patriots hat on. And then, very fitting for tonight. See if you can guess this state.
Alaska.
That it's just a guy stuck in a snowbank.
Before we lose everyone tonight, Chris, do you want to talk about NTP real quick?
NTP, a proud sponsor of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast. They can do your cybersecurity for you. They'll put the NTP logo at the bottom of your website if you want to, probably. I don't think they won't. They wouldn't do that. But that is how confident they are. Confidence is at that level. They won't do the actual logo thing, but their confidence is there. Check out NTP. They can get your EDR going. They can be your NOC. They can do all kinds of cybersecurity services for you. So check them out.
And how do you reach them?
Click on the link in the podcast description so that I'm answering that well.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I think that's about it for tonight. Do you guys have any other thoughts? Any other topics that's going on? Oh,
no.
Power School bought School Messenger. That was the other thing I saw this week
while
I was on the cruise ship relaxing. I got a notification that Power School bought School Messenger. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes things, if it does.
I like it.
Good input, guys.
Awkward silence here.
Yes.
You should have just let it go. Like we were done.
Apparently. All right. Well, this time next week, Mark will have returned from Midwest Tech Talk, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And hopefully
a changed man.
Yeah. Changed man with a bunch of new friends.
Yep.
It'll
be fun.
Yeah.
You should take a picture before you come down. Like take a picture of yourself, and then when you return, you're gonna see that things are different. You're gonna physically look different.
Okay. All right. I will do that.
All right. Well, that's been this week's episode, I guess. For now, lots of off topic.
Josh, could you tell me one more fact about Alaska, please?
That there is a fund in Alaska that was established by the Alieskin pipeline, and yes, that is pronounced correctly. That each resident that has stayed there for over a year gets a check every year from the Alieskin pipeline fund. This year, I think they said it was just over $3,000 per person. Yeah, it comes from their oil generation.
That is super cool.
Yeah, I learned a lot, man.
Yeah, we did too.
I learned. You're going to continue. This is this is my gift to you, my souvenir.
By the way, and I got asked about this. I wanted you to know
where I was.
And I want everyone to know that we are K-12 Tech Talk, and so are you.
Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next week.